Okay, we are live. And it looks like there's a bunch of people coming into the room now.
All right.
How are you, everybody? If you can, just say hi to me and just tell me that you hear us fine. That would be great. I know there's always a little bit of a delay between the time that I talk and when you hear me. But I think the sound should be good. I can hear, hi, Wayne. Hi, Darla. Got a thumbs up from Darla. If you guys want to tell me where you're from, trip from Denver, that's great. I appreciate that. I am currently in Padstow, England. So we just came over, having fun. I'm visiting with my parents and really enjoying it here, actually. We went yesterday to, are you familiar with the show Doc Martin? Did you ever see the show Doc Martin, Joe?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know if I've seen it in its entirety, but I recognize the name.
Yeah, so that took place in Port Isaac, and we went there yesterday to have a look at it. It was a pretty cool place, actually.
Oh, that's neat. Now, is that where your folks live?
No, my folks are from Lincoln.
Okay.
So I came over from Budapest, and they came over from Lincoln, and we met up in London. Yeah. Okay. So I haven't seen my parents for months, probably 6 months, actually. So it was really good to see them, and they're still here with us right now. We're just enjoying ourselves. Great. Yep.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you the photo that you posted you published in the Liberty Zeppelin this past month. I guess that was in Budapest, wasn't it? With the lake in the background.
That was in Slovenia.
That was in Slovenia. That was stunning.
It's awesome.
Absolutely stunning.
I love Slovenia. Slovenia is really amazing, actually.
And I think, wasn't there like a castle up on the hill or something?
Yeah. So Slovenia's got a big lake. It's called Bled Lake, and then there's an island in the middle of it, and there's a monastery on top of that. But then over on the side of the lake, there's a big cliff with a castle on top of that. So it's super cool. It's really cool.
So neat.
We went swimming in there because it was like 95 degrees and the water was like 60 degrees. So
holy moly.
It was pretty, but it was good. It was good.
Whew, that'll get you going.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we got a lot of people commenting here. I appreciate everybody commenting. Hi, Marnie from Michigan. Whereabouts in Michigan? Because I grew up in Michigan. I loved the Traverse City area, Petoskey, all of that stuff. Greg, Kansas City. That's close to where I'm from, Lincoln. Southwest Virginia. Awesome.
All right.
Ventura, California. Wayne, New York. Austin. Earth. That's good to know. Clare, Michigan. I don't know where Clare, Michigan is. Okay. So 95 degrees. What's that? What's that? 28 Celsius. I think it's more like 95 is more like 38, right? Or maybe even higher. Yeah. It was pretty hot. Lebanon, Tennessee, Santa Clara, California. Awesome. Okay. Yes, there will be a recording of this for later. Okay. I think it's the top of the hour for me. So it's top of the hour for you too. That's how it works, I guess. So let's get started. And today we've got a very interesting session because we're going to talk about something we haven't really talked much about in the past. And I've really learned a lot from Joe. And Joe is actually, we met each other because you're a member of the Privacy Academy, right?
Yeah. I have been for years. Gosh, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And so we started talking, and we started talking about what each other does, and he's done like a similar presentation to this for other people like Tom Woods and that type of thing. So I thought, why don't we have Joe on, and also actually Joe has written some articles for Liberty Zeppelin for me, and he talks about a subject that I really like. I'm fascinated with, which is um, how money works, and really what is the behind the scenes workings of money, how it works, and all of that stuff. So, how are you, Joe?
Oh, I'm doing great. Doing great. I couldn't be better. And it's just such an honor. I'm so thrilled just to be able to chat with you and with everybody that's joined us today. So thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. So you are, so your name is Joe Withrow, and where are you at?
So I'm in a place called Hot Springs, Virginia,
Hot
which is
Spring.
up, it's the western part of the state, way up in the mountains. And so
Got
we've
it.
got about 5 acres up here. We're about 20 minutes from the closest town to the north and 20 minutes from the closest town to the south. And so very, very rural, but it's beautiful and it's my speed.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Sounds great. Okay, and so you are really a financial expert. So let's talk about let's talk about your background
Sure.
and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so I really I've got my background or my first career was corporate banking. And so, I kind of went through the normal educational process, public schools growing up and then public university. I majored in finance and, I didn't know what to do. You're in finance and well, banking's right there. So figured I'd try to get a banking job. And I got a really my big break. I got hired by Wells Fargo's loss mitigation department in 2008, and they brought a bunch of us in specifically to clean up the mortgage crisis, which was it's really that was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
And that opened my eyes to a lot of how the financial system works, how there's some corruption embedded in the system, there's incentives that are misaligned, all those things. And so needless to say, I didn't stay in corporate banking for that long. I migrated out and moved into the investment research industry after a number of years, but it's really that experience was so foundational for me.
Yeah.
It's also what prompted me to start studying free market economics. It set me off on my journey in the investment space as well, because, I was doing something that I didn't believe in the banking world. And every day, and anybody who's been in this situation, like it eats at you when you're doing something that you don't find meaning in. And so I wanted to quit my job every day, but I didn't have the financial ability. So I had to really start to learn, okay, well, how can I build my personal finances up to the point where I can tell these guys to take a hike?
Yeah, and I think, I've studied money a lot over the years, and there's a lot that people don't know about money. But I think if you know about money and how it actually works, it can really help you understand investing better. Because I think investing is a pretty scary term for most people, or it's just one of those things like, okay, I invest, I put my money in you know, I give it to a financial advisor or something like that, and just let them deal with it. But if
Right.
you know about it and you know what's what, I think you can really take control of that, right?
Absolutely. That's the key. If you look at kind of the conventional approach that I mean, it was hammered into my head. You do things the same way. You have your 401k and then you open up an IRA or a SEP IRA if you're self-employed. And you do that and you stick your money in these qualified retirement accounts. It's stuck there. It's got to stay there until you're a certain age. And then you get a couple of different funds you can pick from, but you're paying fees over and over again by investing in these funds, and you really don't have any control. And you're exposed to a lot of extra risk that I just don't think is necessary. And so, I think understanding money really opens your eyes to the fact that number one, that's a fragile way to do it, and there's much more robust methods that you can kind of employ for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot about from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, all of that stuff. I read that for many years, and I know also from my natural skeptical nature of how the world works and how I think finances, I think the Fed and all of this stuff is really at the core of a lot of the problems in our society right now.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking about it beforehand when you were talking about this cleanup that you were doing with the mortgage crisis in 2008, and you were talking about the banks and government actually colluding. And so, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really kind of a shock to me. I was I was early 20s at the time. So I was just a kid. I thought the world worked the way the college textbooks tell you it works, or perhaps the news. But, it turns out there's a hidden hierarchy of sorts that's kind of embedded in the financial system, and it's tied to kind of some government departments. So when you're talking about mortgage originations, there are multiple government departments that are involved in that process. You've got HUD and FHA, you've got the USDA, the VA, and then of course there's Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac, which are at the center of the entire mortgage market. And so I was in the FHA department of Wells Fargo's loss mitigation team. So there were different departments for the different government loan types, mortgage types. And so during the mortgage crisis, if you remember, 2008, the news is running all the stories about all the foreclosures and, all the chaos and everything. And well, the government's decided we don't want that on the news anymore. We need this to go away. And so somewhere within the hierarchy, all these different departments, the HUD, USDA, VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they got a directive that, hey, we don't care how you do it, make this thing go away. We don't want it on the news anymore. And so they approached the banks, and basically each of these different departments worked out specific criteria. And they said to the banks, hey, we want you to take every single past due mortgage, past due loan that you have, even if it's in foreclosure. We want you to assess it based on these criteria. If the borrower can qualify for a modification based on this criteria, this list of items you need to check, we want you to modify that mortgage, make it current, get it off the news. And so the way those modifications worked is we would take the past due balance, whatever that happened to be, we would stick it back at the end of the loan. They called it capitalizing the past due balance. So you take what's past due, stick it at the end of the loan, you stretch the term of that loan back out to 30 years, and then we would set the interest rate for the new mortgage at whatever the FHA's floor rate was for that day. And typically we were getting borrowers' rates down because the Fed was aggressively cutting rates at that time. And then at that point, they would be current and they could get out of the foreclosure process. And so on the surface, it sounds noble and benevolent, doesn't it? Isn't this a great thing? And that's how it was presented to us too. Like, you've got an important job to do. You got to help all these people. And there were, for some people, that may have been a good solution for them. But I started to notice some things as I'm involved in this and I'm doing these modifications that really jumped out at me. It kind of set off an alarm in my head. And one of those things was I started to notice around me. So we're working in a giant corporate cubicle farm. There's no offices. You're just out there with a cubicle. You can hear everybody around you. And I started to notice that whenever somebody would have to turn down or deny a borrower for a modification because they didn't match that criteria, they had to give them a call. We had to call these folks. And inevitably, the borrower wanted to know, well, okay, what's the criteria? Why didn't I qualify? And I've listened, my colleagues would explain, here's the criteria. And it was, namely, you've got to show that you can afford the new mortgage payment. Whatever the new mortgage payment is, you have to have enough income that exceeds your expenses to afford that payment. And so what I'd hear over and over is, oh, okay, well, it was a mistake. Hold on, we probably matched that criteria. And then how did the bank verify whether or not what they said was true? And the answer was they didn't. There was no the verification process was the borrower was required to submit a monthly budget that says what their income was and what their expenses was. And some of these folks would just write it down, jot it, scribble it on a notepad, a piece of notebook paper, and fax it into the bank. And if they did that, they would qualify. And so I started noticing my colleagues would just tell them, "I'll just write it down, just send it in, fax it, here's the fax number, and we'll reopen it, we'll look at it again." And so I stopped to think, well, hold on. Isn't this what caused the problem in the first place? The banks were just giving out loans, mortgages to anybody who showed up and said, "Oh yeah, I make, $200,000 a year," or whatever. That was a big part of the problem. So we were just doing the same thing. And then I started to notice something that caused me to look a little deeper at the loans in my portfolio that I was responsible for trying to modify. And here's what I noticed. When a lot of these loans, there would be a relatively large chunk of fees that had accumulated. And so for every month you don't pay your mortgage, you get hit with a late payment fee. But after a loan goes in default for so long, it's different per state, but if it's a month or 2 months, whatever it is, at some point the bank initiates the foreclosure process, which means engaging an attorney. At that point, that attorney starts billing, and those attorney fees and costs start to accrue. And so I started to realize all those fees were just sitting in the past due balance. And what were we doing with the modification? We were adding them to the amount that the borrower owed. They weren't forgiven, they weren't waived. And so I started to realize, hold on, these guys are just making sure they capture those fees. If the borrower were to walk away, if they were to say, "No, I don't want to do this loan modification," maybe they just don't think the home's worth it. Because remember, 2008, real estate prices are crashing. In some markets in the US, real estate values fell 50% or more. And so some of the borrowers, if they walked away, a foreclosure stays on your credit report for 7 years, but there's things you can do to build your credit in that time. And then you've got a clean slate and you're not responsible for those fees. So it was almost like, hold on, they're just kicking the can down the road to try to capture as many of these fees as they can. And I started looking at it, and it bothered me so much. In a morning meeting, I showed up one day and I raised my hand and I asked the question, "Hey, is anybody tracking the mortgage value or the property value, the real estate value of these homes relative to the loan value or the mortgage balance that we're doing with these modifications?" We need to make sure that the loan to value that we're sticking people with isn't more than what the home's worth, because if it does, they're stuck. They won't be able to sell the home. And of course, they told me to shut up and do my job. And I started to learn, you don't ask questions. And that's when an older gentleman that had been working in banking for years, he came up to me after the meeting, after I asked that question. And he said, "Joe, you can't do stuff like that, man. That's how you get fired. Listen, you got to know what's happening. The government, the HUD, in our case, is paying the bank a fixed rate for every single modification that they do. So every time we modify a loan, HUD pays the bank a fixed amount. They don't care about what happens 2 years down the road. They're trying to make as much money as they can today. That's what this is about. So if you keep at it, you're not going to be around long." So that was the big eye opener for me. It wasn't about helping people. It was about the government wanted the crisis to go away, and they were essentially bribing the banks to make sure that it did in the short term. Then if it happened again, years down the road, they'll just figure something else out. So that was the big collusion that was evident. It was right there.
Yeah. So that's a very clear sign that it's totally corrupt, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is so corrupt. I mean, I think this is true if you look at any aspect of government anywhere. It is just riddled with corruption. So,
it's the same kind of thing within the financial system too. The same type of collusion that happens, and the same thing about routing fees to Wall Street and tax revenues to the government. It's all baked into the cake.
Yeah. So if you're on Twitter now, you see all kinds of videos of people where they're just, and typically they're young people, but not always. But there's these young people on Twitter that are just saying, they're crying, and they're like,
Yeah.
they're totally, overwhelmed because they're working their butts off. They went to college, they got jobs, and no matter what they do, they cannot get ahead. And they're seeing prices go up. They're seeing inflation, all of this stuff. And, inflation is one of those tricky things that people don't really understand. And the government wants it that way. The government doesn't want us to understand what inflation is. So let's talk about inflation. And I guess that leads us to like the nature of money and all of that stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they tell us inflation is rising prices, right? And then they pretend it's like some kind of mystery. And we've got to have the Federal Reserve is going to, engage in this great battle against inflation. But inflation's not rising prices. That's the symptom of inflation. Inflation is the expansion of the money supply. It's creating dollars out of thin air and injecting them into the economy. And so it's no mystery. If you don't do that, prices generally won't rise across the board. I mean, there's market factors. There's supply and demand factors for each, type of good or each type of service or industry. But inflation, with creating dollars out of thin air, drives prices up across the board, irregardless of supply and demand dynamics. And so, yeah, they just pretend like it's this mystery monster that we need them to fight, but it's really quite simple. They're causing inflation. They're causing the problems that we see. And my heart goes out to the young people because, if you think about somebody getting out into the workforce today and you look and you see what a regular house now costs, I don't know how I bought a house in, let's see, I bought my first house in, I think it was 2011. And I think I paid, let's see, purchase price was $110,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, nice neighborhood, about quarter-acre lot, fenced in backyard, wooded backyard, no houses behind it. Nice little starter home, $110,000. I checked the price on Zillow for that same house. It's now over $300,000. And I look at it, I would not have been able to afford that house when I bought it if it cost over $300,000. And so it's the same thing with cars and everything. It's, what do you do? How do you get ahead? It's insidious what inflation does.
And it's obviously not just young people either. I mean, there's a lot of older people that are dealing with like Social Security. And the thing that's funny about Social Security is, the government, what is it? The cost of living increases. They don't factor in. I don't think they factor in like housing prices, food prices, and gas prices.
Yeah, the three things that everybody is guaranteed to pay for, they just pull that out.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, these prices went up this much, so so the cost of living increase never keeps up with the cost of living. It's just so dishonest.
Yeah. Okay, so I think you had a slideshow. Let me just present this because there's a couple things here that I think are important for understanding. Okay, so can you explain this chart?
Yeah, so this is why what we're talking about is so important. So, inflation, it's been accelerated recently, but it's not a new thing. If we look at this chart, it's the purchasing power of the US dollar going back to 1970. And this data comes from the Federal Reserve's database. This is their data. It's not estimates and it's not something coming from some guy's blog. And it shows very clearly that, broadly speaking, the US dollar has lost about 88% of its purchasing power since 1970. And that means, essentially, $1 in 1970 could buy what roughly $8 buys today. And that's why prices have skyrocketed for everything. It's not that it got more expensive to produce these things or to distribute these things. In many cases, it got much cheaper with our technological increases in terms of being able to produce and supply basic goods. But our dollar just doesn't buy what it used to. And that's what this chart shows. It's not hypothetical. It's baked into the cake. And it's all because they're creating trillions of dollars out of nothing. I think they've created, jog my memory for a second, I think it's been $7 trillion that they've created since 2020 alone. And this is what happens. It's no mystery.
Yeah. And if you take this, because I saw another chart that goes back further. So this is 1970, but if you go back to 1913, which is when the Fed was created, I think the US dollar has lost 98.6%.
98%. Yeah. I mean, almost all its value, right? Its purchasing power. That's the Fed's handiwork, you know.
In other words, a dollar today is basically the same value as what, let's say, 3 cents was worth back in 1913. So that shows you, when one of the things that I like to look at is, okay, housing prices. Let's say if we go back to like 1940 or whatever, okay, you could buy a house for like $2,500. Yeah. And what is the difference? Why is it like the same house like $250,000 now, where it was like $2,500 in 1940? And it's, there's nothing that has changed with the house. It's not like the house has improved. It's actually gotten worse. The land hasn't gone up. I mean, it's the same piece of land that it was back then. So what's the difference? The difference is the value of the dollar.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. It's very, so when you see this, it really opens your eyes to a lot of things. I mean, we see how inflation distorts every aspect of the economy.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got another slide here. So let's look at this. Explain this.
Yeah, so this is exactly what you're talking about, just kind of more recent here. So this table measures, it tracks the median price of a new car, 10 gallons of gas to put in that car, 5 pounds of ground beef, and then it also tracks the median home price and the median annual income for each year, for each decade, going back to 1970. And it shows us the progression here. What you were talking about with, houses, if we look at what a house cost back in 1980, look at that median home price in 1980, $47,200. And of course, today, the median price of a new home is over $430,000. And of course, that number is skewed by properties in the larger cities, but it's no different than what it was in 1980. The median price just tracks whatever's in the middle between the high and the low.
Yeah.
And then you look at what's a new car cost today. It costs more than a new house back in 1980, which is just absurd. And we can see these prices have gone up every 10-year period dramatically. And then the big piece of the puzzle here, and I think this helps kind of contextualize it, is that bottom line, which is the median income compared to the median home price. And if we go back to 1970, 54% of the median, a person's median income, their annual salary could cover 54% of the purchase price of the median home, of the regular home, back in 1970. Today, the median salary can only cover 17%. So it means people are having to go deeper and deeper into debt to buy houses, which means their mortgage payments are much more difficult to handle. And it's just, it's right there baked into the cake. It makes life so much harder, for if the median income today could cover 54% or 50% of the home price, everybody would be making over something like $230,000 or $215,000, however the number works out. But that's not the case. So this really makes it clear as day the impact that inflation has on our society.
Yeah, and so we talk about inflation as being an invisible tax, and this is it really is, and it's kind of like that analogy of you put a frog in a pot of water and slowly bring it to boil. That's kind of what's going on with this is people. This process happens slowly. And people just adjust and adapt to the current situations. And it's funny to me how we have just accepted that, okay, housing prices are going to go up. They go up all the time, right? We just accept that. Prices of everything just go up. And the Fed actually wants that to happen. They have this target goal of, a certain amount of inflation every year, but that's not the way it should be. I mean, if our money was still gold and silver, and actually, if you look at the purchasing power of the dollar before the Fed was created, it's stable. I mean, for like 100 years, it's stable because it's gold, and the value of gold was the value of gold. It's real money. And so I think, can you expand on that a little bit? Or what? I feel like I'm trying to get a thought across, and I'm not really doing a good job at this.
So. Yeah, well, I thought, that made perfect sense to me. And it is absolutely true. With sound money, when money was gold and silver backed by precious metals, it maintained its value. And what we saw was prices tended to go down. And that's because as technology improved, it made it cheaper to produce things. It made it easier to ship things out to people. And so with money that is stable, prices go down. And so then, who wouldn't want the prices for the things they buy to go down over time? That makes life easier.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where you look at, we're getting into the talk of money and what money is. And when money was, gold or silver, you didn't need to have any type of sophisticated investment plan. You just earned money and just saved it because it's going to maintain its value. But I think it's really interesting. If you look back in just American history, it's the U.S. Coinage Act of 1792 defined the U.S. dollar as 371.25 grains of pure silver. And that act was passed shortly after the U.S. Constitution was ratified. And so that's what the dollar was. It was a certain weight of silver. And the reason it was that specific weight, 371.25 grains, is because the Spanish milled dollar coin was the most widely circulating silver coin in the American colonies. And so the founders figured, well, let's have our coin be the same weight. And so it keeps, prices even throughout the early economy. And so that's what our money was originally. It was a weight of precious metals. But of course, it's not anymore. It's just government currency, which really it's an abstraction. It's just made up. It's, just digits in a database somewhere.
Yeah, and this is why it doesn't make sense to save money anymore. Because if you throw money into a savings account, the cost or the devaluation of the purchasing power of that dollar is decreasing faster than any kind of interest rate that you're going to be paid. So let's say you have $10,000 in the bank. That money on January 1st of last year is worth more than it's worth a year later, regardless of what interest they're paying or whatever on that, right?
Yeah, if that interest rate, if the yield you're getting cannot keep up with consumer price inflation, real consumer price inflation, not the government statistic version that pulls out food and energy and those types of things. If the yield doesn't keep up with consumer price inflation, yeah, it's still that money is just losing purchasing power over time, which means it's becoming worth less. And so it makes it very, very difficult, not even just to get ahead, but just to stay where you are.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, the fact is that it is. That's not a hypothetical. That is a fact. I mean, if you look at what the price of things were, I saw this, and I should have brought it to this presentation, but something about the prices at the beginning of Joe Biden's presidency and the prices now ridiculously higher.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I don't want to make this necessarily political, and I don't blame this on the president. This is more of the Federal Reserve thing and the government as a whole, corrupting the dollar as opposed to any one particular administration. It's a lot deeper than just one particular administration, but it is definitely accelerating right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the U.S. Treasury got into the act too. And they just, I don't even know if it's constitutional, but you remember the stimulus payments. That was the U.S. Treasury. That wasn't even the Fed monetizing debt. That was just them borrowing money and just sending it out.
Yeah.
into the economy.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too deep into this, but I will say that next week I'm interviewing Andy Sheckman. Are you familiar with Andy Sheckman?
A
He's
little
from
bit, yeah, a little bit.
Mills Franklin, I think. He is one of the best people that I know on the geopolitics of money. And so we're going to talk about that next week. And it is really, so he is really zoomed in on what is happening, what does the future hold for the dollar, because all the other countries, so you just laid out this plan of the Federal Reserve just keeps printing money and devaluing dollars. And the rest of the world has played along with this. So it's not just screwing Americans, it's screwing the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is holding on to dollars. I mean, that's been the reserve currency. That's what reserve currency means. And so these other countries are sick of it. They're sick of being screwed by the American government. And they're also sick of one of the things that American government does with all this inflation is pay for this military that then they use to enforce the strength of the dollar. So it's this circle that they create. And what is now happening is they're creating the BRICS. So the BRICS is a competitive current or money as opposed to the U.S. dollar. And while the U.S. dollar is based on just debt, and we can print whatever we want to, and we do print whatever we want to, BRICS is actually going to be backed by commodities. And so all of these companies, all these countries have gold and silver and then there's oil and all of these other things that will actually back the value of the BRICS currency. And so it is going to screw America. I mean, really, I think very within the next, I don't know when. It's hard to predict when, but America's in trouble because we're not going to be the reserve currency for much longer.
Yeah, I read that they're looking at like a 40% commodity backing, something like that and it's an alternative international settlement system. So conducting trade and finance and everything outside of the dollar. And my thesis is that this is why the Fed raised interest rates so aggressively in 2022 and didn't back down even when, even the United Nations put out a report, I think in October 22, saying the Fed was reckless and irresponsible and told them to stop raising rates. Well, the Fed didn't stop. And I don't think that was exclusively about fighting inflation. I think it's because they see this coming, and it's all about global capital. And, they want to keep as much global capital within the dollar denominated financial system as possible. And so how do you do that? Well, if you want people to buy treasury bonds, they've got to pay some type of yield. And so I really think that's a piece of the interest rate story. And that's also why I don't think the Fed's going to be slashing rates the way they talk about in the financial media, because I think they know they've got to have some type of yield that they can offer to keep, global capital from fleeing to, the alternative system in mass when it's ready. I don't think that system's quite ready yet, but they're working on it. I'll tune into what Andy has to say.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go from, we've been talking about kind of like big picture stuff up until now. And so what you have done, and this is what really interested me and why I invited you on today is, excuse me, you take this and you turn it into an investing strategy for people, right? And you do it for yourself too. So tell me what your philosophy is on, personal finances. What should people do for personal finances, personal investments, all of that stuff?
Yeah. So to me, I like to use the lesson from the classic board game Monopoly here. And I imagine we've probably all played that game, maybe not in a while, but when you're playing the board game Monopoly, you understand that the paper money is worthless. It has no value. You don't want to accumulate a bunch of money. What you want to do is take the money you do earn and you use it to acquire the highest quality assets that you can get. That's the name of the game. And in a world in which, our money is not terribly different from Monopoly money. The only difference is you can actually buy things with it. But it's the same type of thing where the money is depreciating, declining in value. And so we want to take our money that we earn and we want to build a robust asset portfolio of the highest quality assets that we can get. And that's how we can protect ourselves from inflation. And if we get a little bit more advanced, we can also start to compound our money, and we can start to generate extra monthly income as well. But it's really that simple. And so my philosophy is financial security first, and then financial independence. And so I define financial security as the ability to weather any type of emergency in relative comfort for an extended period of time. So if you lose your job or your primary source of income, or if there's some type of medical expense that you have, you've got enough, if you build up enough assets that you can fall back on, you can deal with it comfortably and rationally and kind of work through it. And so I'll let you kind of steer me as to what specifically you want to talk about with that. But the key is, rather than just building up financial assets in qualified retirement accounts, where you put the money in and now you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half. If you do need to pull your money out early, they charge you a 10% penalty, and they hit you with ordinary income taxes. And so you're giving up all control, and you're exposed. You're only investing in one single asset class. So you're exposed to additional risk. The key is, with a robust asset portfolio, you can focus on reserve assets that exist outside the financial system that are going to maintain their value over time and potentially increase in value as well. You can focus on assets that can compound your money over time. You can focus on there's ways to have liquidity within the financial system, access to cash without it being cash in the bank. And so you can set up, you can keep a little liquidity in there in case you need it without saving a bunch in a bank account. And then, of course, the big thing, probably the most exciting thing, is passive income investments, the assets you can purchase that are going to create extra monthly income for you. And so the key is to build an asset portfolio consisting of all of them. And so, that way we can't predict the future entirely, but that way we do have protection against inflation in a number of ways. We've got protection against shenanigans in the financial system, whether it's bank collapses or whether they try to do the bail-in thing again in the future. We can protect ourselves from that. And then we can go out and create extra monthly income. And I see that as a much more robust way to go.
So I'm trying to understand what you were just saying there. So you were comparing basically like the traditional retirement approach to what you do. Is that right? Can you explain that again?
Yeah. So do you want me to talk about the traditional retirement approach, or specifically kind of what I advocate in my work?
Yeah, just compare the two. I mean, just start with the traditional retirement approach, and
Yeah. So that conventional approach says that we should all funnel a portion of our income into qualified retirement accounts, which are 401ks, IRAs, SEP IRAs if you're self-employed. And then they basically tell us to buy various kinds of funds within those accounts. And the idea is that we want our financial assets, our retirement accounts, to grow to a certain dollar value by the time we're ready to retire. And the idea is that if we can just get those accounts up to a certain level, then we'll have enough money to where we can retire. But if you look at it, what happens? What do you do when you retire? You make withdrawals from those accounts, which means you're selling those assets that you work so hard. You're selling those funds that you work so hard to build. Then you've got to pay ordinary income taxes when you do that, and you can live on whatever's left. But the problem is, as you're selling off those funds to create income for yourself in retirement, well, your asset base is coming down. So you have less income available to you. And this is why I think I've read that most retirees say their number one fear is outliving their money. And so I see that approach is incredibly fragile, and it centers around government currency. We just want to invest in funds and then sell them so we have dollars. But who knows what dollars are going to buy, years down the road. And so from my perspective, that approach puts humanity on a hamster wheel. It doesn't set us up to build a lasting legacy. And I think it kind of encourages short-term thinking in our society too. That's just kind of a pet theory.
Yeah.
So the investment approach that I advocate is, number one, I don't invest in retirement accounts at all. I'm not trusting my future to their rules. I'm not giving up control of my money. And the only carrot that they have with those is, hey, you can defer capital gains taxes until you retire, but they're going to hit you with ordinary income taxes when you retire. And if we look at, we're approaching what, $36 trillion worth of debt. What do we think tax rates are going to do? And by the way, I think I'm about to have a storm here, so it looks like it's getting dark. If I need to turn the overhead lights on so I don't look like a creepy guy in the shadows, let me know.
Sure.
But I'll turn the overhead lights on so I don't look too creepy. Sorry about that. But it's about control, and it's about having access to your money in ways that you control, that mitigate a lot of the risks. And so my approach then is to focus on building a portfolio of various assets, not just funds. And in fact, I'm not interested in whether it's exchange traded funds or index funds, or I'm not interested in that stuff at all. I want to buy high quality assets across the board, different types of assets for different reasons. And I'm happy to dive into anything about that more.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And I think one of the points that you made was really important, because if you're investing in these retirement funds that they want you to invest in, you're investing in the dollar and you're investing in the future stability of the dollar. And that's not true when you have actually real assets, right? Because, like, for example, let's say you have you could look at a rental house, but you could also look at like a song. So let's say you've got Blake Shelton, and he's got a song that he puts out there, and he gets royalties on those songs. Well, that the royalties are basically not. It's not like, okay, he's going to make however many cents per song played. It's a percentage. So if, let's say, the dollar goes down and the price of playing that song keeps going up, he's still getting that percentage. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but
people aren't going to stop listening to music no matter what happens to the dollar. And so it's a very complex system how those royalties work. But I don't think the artists don't own 100% of their rights to begin with. I think whatever contract they have with the music labels, and then somehow the music labels chop up those royalties, and investors can buy a certain percentage. So it's like there could be lots of different people who own a small percentage of the rights to independent songs.
No,
it's the same thing with
understand
movies or television. So it's a much different approach.
But I mean, if let's just take a perspective of like a rental house then, because you talk about rental houses too, right?
Yep.
So let's say the dollar crashes, but you've still got an asset there, which is that rental house, which is still bringing in money, or it's still valuable at least.
Yeah, there's still some value there, and that's the key. And you get into doing rental investment real estate's one passive income investment available to us. And so the idea is to build a portfolio of real assets, and also some of those assets can throw off income. And ideally, we don't ever want to have to sell our assets. When we're buying these high quality assets, let's hold them, and then the income that these assets provide can fund our lifestyle, cover our expenses, whatever the case is. And so that way we have a legacy that's not rooted in the value of the dollar, because you look at a reserve asset like gold, it has maintained its purchasing power for centuries, and there's a liquid market in every country on this planet where people are buying and selling gold.
Yeah. Okay, so Jim has a good question here. Many of the people here are already retired. So is this something that people can take advantage of even if they're retired now? Because I do think that it is, I always have a challenge with what I talk about, because on one hand it's kind of doom and gloom, and I don't like to be that way. I don't like to talk about negative stuff, but at the same time, I think that's what I think is really happening. When you look behind the scenes and see what's really happening, I think it's not good for the future. So what is what are the criteria for people to be able to do what you're talking about there, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I need to, number one, I'm not a licensed financial advisor, so I can't give personalized financial advice or anything like that. But my thinking there is, it's all about if you've already got a nest egg, if you've got some savings, you can reposition that savings in such a manner that it protects you against a lot of these risks and these things that we're concerned about, whether that's inflation or whether that's all the geopolitical stuff that's happening. And so there's no restrictions. And somebody who's retired can also focus on various kinds of passive income investments to create extra income from themselves. And then maybe if they've already have a substantial retirement account, maybe they don't have to sell down as much. I mean, they force you to take withdrawals up to a certain point once you hit retirement age. But if you have extra income coming in, you can not sell down your retirement account as fast potentially. And so it's not limited to people who are younger and just trying to build something. In fact, it's easier to create true financial security if you've already got a nest egg to start with. I started with nothing. And when you're starting from the bottom, you've just got to build that thing up, week by week, month by month. And it takes some time. It's a slow moving process, but it snowballs over time.
Yeah. So I guess the point is, it's a different approach than what you hear most financial advisors talk about. Because most financial advisors would just say, invest with, I can't even think of a firm. I don't do that kind of investing. So
Vanguard
or something like that, and just give your money to them and let them do it. And I've never really understood that approach. Well, you work so hard for your money, and then you turn it over to somebody that supposedly knows what they're doing. But it seems to me that you should know how to invest too.
Yeah, you look at that relationship, when you're using a money manager like that, and you're the one providing all the money and taking all the risk. You're paying them fees for managing the money, but they get paid those fees whether or not their investments do well. It doesn't matter, and they have no liability if their investments don't do well. And then if you're in qualified retirement accounts, well, you're locked up for extended periods of time. And by the way, they could change the rules on those accounts at any time without your input or your consent. And so, yeah, it's just if we think about that in terms of an investment partnership, and if you view, a Vanguard or whatever as your investment partner, and you look at those terms, I doubt many people would agree to that. It's just too one-sided. You take all the risk and provide the money. They have all the control and they make the rules and they can change them if they want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll also say that Chris Martenson at Peak Prosperity just did a large, expose about what do they call it? There was a name, I can't remember what they called it, but it's basically how some of the changes that they've made to the financial industry, stocks and all of that stuff, so that if you go through, let's say, Vanguard or Charles Schwab or something like that, you don't actually own that stock anymore. There's some very complicated ways that they do this, and it's kind of like the banking system. If you put your money in a bank, you don't technically own that money anymore. You're officially a creditor of the bank. I think this is the thing that really intrigues me is we have to be aware of really what's going on with the people and the companies that are what I call the takers. So you got the makers and you got the takers, and the takers are in charge of a lot of this stuff, and they design all of this stuff to meet their goals. And so I think it's important to think outside the box and not totally just trust people, not trust what they say or even trust the system per se.
It'd be one thing if they demonstrated themselves as trustworthy, but they've demonstrated the opposite. And it's along the same lines, the reason why corporate America went woke and have, engaged in all these ridiculous uh, woke policies like DEI and net zero and all the rest. The reason they've gone along with that is because companies like BlackRock, money managers like BlackRock, when you invest in their fund, they own those shares, which gives them the voting rights for the companies that they're invested in, and so they get board seats, and then they influence the board of these companies to go with these ridiculous policies. And we're finally seeing backlash to this now. Whether it's Disney or Anheuser-Busch with Bud Light and all the backlash that they've received. So I think we're kind of we've reached peak wokeness in corporate America, but it was all because everybody's putting their money with BlackRock, and so BlackRock gets to vote on company policy or on board policy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not going away either. So, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about what you do, because you have a business called the Phoenician League, and tell me what you do with that.
Yeah. So the Phoenician League, it's an investment membership that I launched back in 2022. So I was immersed in the investment research industry for about a decade, and it's great. I love the industry, but I started to see some gaps in the industry, and so I set up the Phoenician League membership, really to address those gaps. And so it's designed to help people really implement every step of what it takes to get financial security and then financial independence, and that includes all the specific investments you can make, both for reserve assets and passive income investments. We've got we walk people through exactly how all of that works. And again, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. We don't manage money. It's nothing like that. We're just a network, and we publish information on finance and investing, and we publish information on markets, really everything to in the investment sphere. And so the membership provides people with access to our financial training program, which is really quite comprehensive. We've got lots of basic training for those who may not have a lot of experience with money and investing. And we have some very advanced training too for those who are experienced, but they're looking for some specialized strategies to kind of grow their investments and create extra income too. That's the big thing. So the core of the program is the core of the membership is our training program. It lays the foundation. But then we do something that I haven't seen anyone else out there doing, and that is we connect our members to the same network of vetted financial professionals that we're relying on ourselves. And so that's all about implementation. It's one thing, and I've bought many different financial courses and things. It's one thing to learn about how you can do something, how you can build a portfolio of reserve assets, or how you can start making extra monthly income with passive income investments. That's great, but how do you put it in practice? And that's usually what's lacking in a lot of the material you see out there. So with our membership, we get people connected to professionals who can help with all of it. And our members get a single point of contact who can walk them through how to actually buy these assets step by step. And so there's nothing theoretical here. It's a lot like a done with you system. And so then you just, people who come in, you can start building assets and getting monthly income, passive monthly income very quickly. And then another thing we do is we get people linked up if they're interested and if it's appropriate. We get people linked up with the same tax advisor that we use personally. And this guy's firm makes sure that your financial situation from a tax standpoint is bulletproof, and everybody's situation is different. So this guy, he does really great work. And then we've got a Rolodex of really any other financial professional that you can think of, whether it's asset protection and estate planning attorneys, insurance specialists, real estate experts. We've got an LLC guy who helps us set up entity structure when we start to get into those assets that we should buy within an LLC. So you name it, and we've got a trusted professional that the Phoenician League can get members connected with. And so really it's multifaceted. We've got the core training. That's about the knowledge of how to create true financial security. And then we've got the professional network, which is about implementation. And so with our membership, nobody ever has to wonder what to do next. And then I'll just add, we also publish an investment newsletter once a month, which we provide professional research on stocks and private investments from time to time too. And then we track those investments in the monthly newsletter. But we're not talking. I mean, we're talking big picture trends, not speculation here. And we also do a members discussion call once a month, and those are always a blast. And so we do those calls open forum where anybody can ask questions and contribute ideas or insight. And we'll also often bring in experts to talk to us about various topics. A lot like what you do, Glenn. And then the last thing is we've got a great core group of members. And so we've got a community platform where we're connected to one another. We're having discussions about what's taking place. We're sharing insight, and we really just support each other. And so that's the basis of the membership. It's about communicating how to create financial security and then financial independence, and then walking people through exactly what steps need to be done, and showing people, the specific investments you can make that will put it all together. And it's all about how it comes together comprehensively.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you said stood out to me because when I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad years ago, and then I read all of his books.
I did too. Yeah,
those are great books, but they're all very theoretical, and they don't actually show you how to put it into knowledge into practice. And it sounds like that's something that you guys offer is, showing people how to actually put certain things into practice. So as I understand it, you're not actually like advising people to invest in a certain way, but you're giving people options. You're telling people how to think about money and how to think about investing. You're giving people the practical steps to do it. But So do I have that right?
You do. And that was a big thing for me. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I don't remember if it was the first one, but one of the books he talked about how he's walking around some little neighborhood. I think it was in Oregon or somewhere. And he sees a house and he's like, in the book, he's talking about looks like a little gingerbread house. That's a good investment. And, that's one of his examples of how to invest in real estate. And I read that and I was, okay, that makes sense. I can see how that's the case. But what if you don't have any nice neighborhoods? Or what if the neighborhoods around you, the prices are, the real estate costs way too much and you never make any money? That kind of leaves you hanging. All right, well, how do I actually do it? So we solve that problem. And real estate's just one piece of the puzzle. We have multiple asset classes that can produce extra income. But when it comes to real estate, we get people plugged into a nationwide real estate network. And this network has brokers that have relationships with new home builders and with the rehabbers, the folks who go around and they buy old homes, fix them up, remodel them, put a new roof, put a new HVAC, all that stuff, and then sell them. So the brokers have those relationships. They vet the properties, and then they upload everything to an investor portal. And so as investors, we can see, okay, here's all the different properties that are available. Here's what the rental ranges are. Here's what the expenses of these properties are. Here's what they cost. And so it makes it, it gives you kind of a library of potential investments you can make. But then the network, goes multiple steps further in that it also has preferred lenders that we can get people connected to. It's got a master insurance policy. So we've got an insurance company that treats everybody investing through this network as if they're one big investment company, even though we're not. It's every individual making their own investment. And then the biggest piece of the puzzle is the property manager. And so the real estate network has relationships, long-term relationships with property managers in the cities that we're investing in. And those property managers are the ones who manage the real estate. So they're going to place a tenant. Usually they do so by closing. And then they handle everything from handling any problems, collecting rent. They've got connections with the contractors and the maintenance people in the area. And so it makes it all very turnkey. And real estate's just one piece of the puzzle. We've got several other assets, and it's the same thing. We've got, we show people the specific investments that they could make if it makes sense for them. And then that, coming back to our core training, it walks through in a very logical order exactly how to think about these things and how to figure out, okay, which investments, which assets make sense for me in my situation, because everybody's situation is different. But yeah, we show people exactly what to do if they believe it's the right course for them.
Yeah. So let's say rental houses, and I know that's only part of what you do, but do you give people like the formula to figure out like this is how much it costs, this is how much the rental income would be, this is all of that stuff, and so this is a good buy, this is not a good buy, all of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our core training program, we go through how to analyze real estate. And so the big thing is you want to look at the cash on cash return. So you can estimate pretty reasonably consistently the monthly cash flow because that's just a facet of what's the purchase price of the property. Today, lenders require you to put usually 20% down on the property. So you'd be financing 80% of that purchase price. You can run a mortgage calculator at today's prevailing rates, or you can get a quote from a lender, and you can see exactly what your mortgage payment would be. The principal and interest piece is pretty fixed. Then you've got the taxes and insurance. Our insurance policy, because we've got a master insurance policy, it's very competitive. And taxes are just dependent upon where the property is located. But you run all those numbers and you see after all the expenses, the mortgage payment, taxes, and insurance, here's what would be left over. That's your cash flow. And so to determine if it's a good deal, you annualize that cash flow, which means you multiply it by 12, and that's how much you'd make a year from the property. Then you divide that by the amount of money it would cost to acquire that property. So that's your down payment and any closing costs that would be included, and that gives you a percentage. And so if it's 12%, that's to me that's pretty good. And then you can compare that to other investments. Okay, well, could I make 12% other places? Could I make more? But if it's something like 4%, well, that's probably not worth your time. So we show people how to do all the analysis. But then the investor portal where you're looking at the properties, it has all those numbers right there. It's not nothing's hidden. It's got all the costs, the expenses, the estimated cash on cash return. And then within that network, you've got as one person, we've got one agent dedicated to the Phoenician League who you can call at any time, ask questions about any particular property, and he's going to walk everybody through everything. And in fact, he does consultations with people about their personal situation, ahead of time. Meaning walking people through exactly every step of the process. And so we've got that in the core training, but we also have a professional who communicates it verbally as well. And so,
Yeah. Okay. So just a couple things real quick. So I know that you do have so explain the Phoenician League and how people sign up, what do they pay for it, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so it's a membership program. We've got an annual membership that people can choose or a monthly membership. The annual rate right now is $999 a year, and the monthly rate is $99 a month. And so people can choose whether they want to pay monthly or annually. We do offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. And so anybody who comes in, they've got 30 days just to check it all out. We've got a wealth of content and information within our membership portal. We can get people connected to any aspect of what we offer that's most suited to them. Check it out for 30 days. And anybody who decides, you know what, it's just not for me, no problem. Send us an email and we will issue a full refund, no questions asked. So there's really no risk to checking anything out. And then after those first 30 days, anybody, you can cancel your membership at any time. So you're not locked into anything here. And it's really, we want to attract the right kind of people. We're all about mutual collaboration. We're about being a true membership, a support network. And so, we're thrilled whenever we have new folks come in and give us a look. And within our community section, anybody who joins us, if they, I encourage them in the welcome email, I encourage people to just give us a little introduction, say hi, introduce yourself. And usually you'll have several people, responding to you pretty quickly saying, hey, welcome, glad to have you. And then it's, we really want this thing to be a true support network. And I'll speak to, that's where the name Phoenician League comes from. The Phoenician League, ancient Phoenician civilization was a trade network back in biblical times. So it's where modern day Lebanon was today. And, when everybody else was running around fighting each other and conquering each other, the Phoenicians are the ones who set up trade networks all throughout the Mediterranean and expanded it into the Atlantic. And so they were the ones who ignored all the political stuff. And they said, we're just going to do win-win deals. We're going to try to bring goods from certain places to other places that wouldn't have them. We'll do exchanges. Exchange of ideas is a big thing. So that's the name Phoenician. And then the league part, I'm motivated by the old Hanseatic League in the Middle Ages in Northern Europe, mostly through Germany, I think. But it was a network of free city-states. And so there was they actually created their own code of law called the Lex Mercatoria, where if you were in these city-states, you had a specific code of law that you had to follow. But it was basically common law. It was the root of common law in Europe. And so it was all about mutual support, mutual collaboration, and being a true network. And that's really what I hope we can imitate.
Okay. So I've got a couple of questions from people here. So Steve asked, does it make sense for a Canadian citizen living in Canada to join the Phoenician League?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the answer, number one, I can't give personalized advice, and I'm not tremendously knowledgeable in the internationalization piece. But if you are able to invest in US-based assets, and that whether that's personally or through an LLC, and we've got specialists who know all the LLC laws and can do free consultations to figure out if that's possible. But if you're able to invest in US-based assets, and if you have an interest in doing so, then I think it would make sense to join the Phoenician League. But I'm not entirely sure. I don't know all the legal stuff there, but we've got guys who would know and would guide us.
And again, the rental properties is only one part of what you do. You do other things also, right?
Yeah. So if we're talking just the passive income stuff, rental properties are one aspect of it. Now, when we first launched, that was really the core focus because we were financing these properties at under 4%. And fixing that 4% for 30 years. And our cash on cash returns for some of these new construction properties, even we were getting 20% returns a year. And that's just cash on cash. That doesn't include the fact that as the tenant pays down the mortgage, you're building equity in the property. And real estate provides some immense tax advantages as well. Yeah. And so the returns were fantastic. Today, on a new construction property, we're closer to the 7 to 10% cash on cash return range, just depending on which market. So we've expanded into mortgage notes quite a bit. And this is an area I don't think many people are aware exists. But you know how when we take out a mortgage to buy a house in the US here, a lot of times the bank will turn around and sell that mortgage. They don't hold it. And so that creates a secondary market for these notes. And I don't think many people realize anybody can buy those notes. You've just got to know where to find them. And that could be, there's a couple of marketplaces out there. And we also have some connections to like closed door investment groups that will buy big chunks of these notes, and then they'll turn around and they'll sell some of them to kind of retail investors. And so when you buy mortgage notes, when the homeowner makes the monthly payment on their property, the principal and interest portion of that comes to you. That's your cash flow. And so the beautiful thing about that is with rates having risen, with real estate, you want your rate to be as low as possible. And so they've come up, so our returns have gone down with real estate. With mortgage notes, now that interest rates have risen, well, that interest rate is your return. But usually we're buying these notes at a discount too. And so our real return is a little bit higher. And so we can get double-digit returns on mortgage notes. And then if we're getting into kind of advanced stuff, and I don't want to bore anybody, but you can do some tax planning, and you can kind of create ways to offset the passive income that those things create. And then we've got some avenues to get into the royalties and that we were talking about earlier. The same avenues are also investing in things like private credit and kind of quirky commercial real estate like boating marinas. The guys doing it, they shared it with me. It turns out boating marinas are a fantastic business. I mean, who would think that? But there's ways to kind of invest in partially in things like that. And so those are other aspects on the passive income investment side. And then we've got kind of specific approach to building up the reserve assets as well. And I think that's important because we want to make sure we have reserve assets to fall back on no matter what.
What do you mean reserve assets?
So things like gold is a big one.
Okay.
I want to own gold as a backstop. You're not investing in gold, hoping you're going to generate a great rate of return. You're just making sure you've got a stable, you're parking your purchasing power and protecting yourself from inflation. We get into Bitcoin too. I see Bitcoin as a reserve asset. I like a certain type of whole life insurance contract too. I've heard it called infinite banking, the infinite banking concept. I've heard other people say max funded life insurance. Anybody who's going to have life insurance anyway, it's a great way to kind of compound your cash value over time. That's insulated from the banking system. That's insulated from any type of bankruptcy or legal or lawsuits or anything like that. And so I see that as a reserve asset. And for older folks too, it becomes more and more prohibitive to buy life insurance on yourself as you get older. But you can also buy life insurance on kids and grandkids, and you can warehouse capital in these policies, and you've got a guaranteed rate of return in there. You can pull cash out at any time for any reason, but while it's in there, it's not cash. Well, it's insulated from all that. And then it's a means of passing wealth on tax-free to future generations as well. So we walk through how all that works, but that's another reserve asset that you can kind of include in your portfolio if it makes sense for your situation. And then we do have a model stock portfolio as well. There's different risks when you're investing in the stock market, but I'm also trained as an investment analyst. And so we're targeting the high quality companies that are piggybacking on long-term trends. And so those are some other avenues that we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So Doris asks a funny question here. It sounds like another job to me.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. We're going to show you exactly how to go about it, but none of this stuff requires you to spend hardly any time on it. After you've learned the fundamentals and after you've kind of set up your portfolio, it's set it and forget it largely. Even the rental real estate portfolio, I've got a nice little rental portfolio, a number of properties. I might spend 10 minutes a week on it because the property manager is doing that work. The property manager is keeping up with everything. And if there's something they need input from me, they just email me or they call me. Same thing with the mortgage notes. I should have mentioned, we're not the homeowner is not sending payments to us. We're using the same servicers that the banks use. So nothing changes from the homeowner's perspective. It's just those servicers, when they collect the payment, they send the principal and interest portion to us. And so it's passive. It's completely passive for the most part. If you're going to have to interface with some professionals from time to time, but it's not a full-time job.
Yeah, so I want to explain something in light of Doris's question here. It sounds like another job to me. What is meant by passive income is you invest in assets that earn money for you. And so, even if let's say you're a high-powered lawyer or you're a doctor or whatever, and you're making a lot of money, that's great, but still your income is tied into the time that you spend on doing it. So if you're taking a vacation or you take a month off or whatever, you're not making money during that period of time. But if you have, let's say you have 100 vending machines around, and each vending machine is making a profit of $50 a month, and you've got 100 of those, that's $5,000 a month passive income that you're making that, you're not working for. You're just, those assets that you have are earning money for you. That's the whole rich dad, poor dad theory. And that's, do I have that right?
That's a great clarification. And it kind of lends itself to another point that we should make. And that is, with the income is tied to the asset. And so, the idea is you buy the asset and you don't have to sell it ever because it just provides income. Unless it appreciates in value and you can sell it, then use that to buy even more assets. But with every asset you buy, your income goes up. And so if I'm just going to throw out a number, this is hypothetical, but suppose, you're focused on acquiring those investments that produce $500 a month in income. Well, you buy one and you've got $500 a month coming to you. It's automatically deposited into your account. You get your second one, well, now you're up to $1,000 a month. And so it gives you a very tangible way to really kind of plan your own finances, because you can set a target and you can say, I want to have X dollars a month in extra income, and whatever that number is. I like to use $10,000 as a benchmark, but it's just as a benchmark because it's easy numbers. If you say I want to get to $10,000 a month, well, if you're getting $500 a month per asset, well, you just need to buy enough assets to get to that point. And so it really makes it tangible. Whereas, if you've got funds in a retirement account, whether or not you get to your retirement number depends on what the market does. It's going up and down all the time. And so I think that's a good point. And that kind of helps us really focus in on our strategy.
Yeah. Okay. So Candace asks a good question. My total savings is 25,000 with no way to grow savings currently. What dollar amount is needed to invest?
Yeah. So there's no specific dollar amount needed to start building your asset portfolio. Now, when you get into, say an investment property, those cost a little bit more of an outlay. But when you're building up your reserve assets, you can invest any amount of money that makes sense for you. And so you don't need necessarily to have a nest egg to start. What I do think you need, and I guess I should say, if you wanted to make your nest, whatever you do have, that 25,000, if you wanted to look at ways to maybe make it a little bit more bulletproof and insulated from inflation and some of these other things, the Phoenician League can kind of walk you through exactly what that looks like. But you don't need anything to start. I started with nothing. I didn't have any assets, no savings, nothing. But I did have a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks. So every time I got a paycheck, I would just take a portion of that money and I just start buying these assets and building my asset portfolio. And I did that every 2 weeks for years. And then when I started earning a little bit more money, I started investing more and building my portfolio faster. And so I would say, you probably do want to have a source of income to really get the most out of it. But you don't need anything to start. That's kind of my thought process.
Yeah, and I think, there's a certain dollar amount that people should just be focused on financial security as opposed to financial freedom too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Financial security first. And so we focus on those assets that are going to build true financial security. And again, the way I see that is instead of just having money sitting in the bank, eroding with inflation, being subjected to bank shenanigans and all that, let's put it in these assets that are immune from that, or at least insulated from it. And then you can think of it the same way. Well, I've got, $25,000 in these assets that I could sell these assets at any time and access that money if I needed to. And then you can set benchmarks. Well, I need more than that. I'm just speaking hypothetically. You think about your own personal situation, your expenses, if you have any dependents or anything like that, where you can kind of pick a number, and whether it's 50,000, 100,000, somebody who's got several children might need more than that. And you say, that's my number that I need to feel really comfortable that if I lost my income or if I had an emergency, I'm good. I can fall back on these assets. And so I think you start there before getting into some of the more advanced investment strategies that create extra income. But it's the choice is yours. It's everybody's situation is unique, and we just kind of provide I guess a path for doing so, and some ideas for how to incorporate it into your own situation.
Yeah, and I think I've watched a number of your videos, and I like the education that you provide and the thought process that you provide on that. I have not taken action myself on the investment strategies that you're doing yet, but it is something that I want to do. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more from you on that. So yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate the vote of confidence. And it's something my passion, this is a labor of love for me. I really, working in the investment research industry, we were striving to put out great investment research, but there were so many gaps in it that I understood that it wasn't, people were really just, they were kind of left to figure out, okay, well, how does this all fit together? So with the Phoenician League, we're putting all the pieces into place. And I'm really passionate, and I believe very strongly, because this is all I'm doing is kind of I've packaged up what I've done myself, starting from nothing and to create true financial security. And so I've done, yeah, everything that we're advocating. It's a path I've walked, and I know it works. And so that's the thing. And then I look back, it bothered me a couple years ago. There was really a speculative mania where people are downloading things like Robinhood and Webull was another one, those brokerage apps on their phone. And people know, my network and my kind of personal connections, they know I'm a finance and investing guy. So they would reach out to me with these just absurd ideas like, hey, what do you think GameStop's going to do? Or what do you think this one or Dogecoin? And I'm like, stop that. That is not what investing, that is gambling.
Yeah.
You don't want to gamble. Maybe you'll get lucky. And if you want to try your hand, go for it. That I know from firsthand experience that does not work over a long period of time. And so, it's what I really want this to be is something that shows people here's what works. And if we do what works, I think we're going to be a lot better off for it in the end. And if we can start building up to the point where we're getting the extra income, I think it can help free up a lot of time for us too. And then we can direct that time to things that really matter to us. That's really my passion.
Yeah. So there's a question from, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Ju. I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I'm sorry about that. Do you offer investment opportunities in any of the BRICS countries? And as I understand it, you don't necessarily offer opportunities. You do tell people about some different options that are available, but you don't recommend those. You don't necessarily recommend things, and you don't. What's the right way to say it? You educate people, right?
Yeah, and we provide professional research too, and then we publish it for everybody, and we have commentary on it. Here's why this makes sense, and in certain situations. But yeah, we publish investment research, and then we show people specific investments that they can make, and we do provide all the training on the what, the why, the how, why it's important, all that. To answer the question about the BRICS, what I think of there is number one, gold is going to be a fundamental part of the BRICS system. I mean, investing in gold itself is a way to kind of play that trend. And then in our model investment stock portfolio, we do have a couple gold royalty companies that we like, and then we do some things with. We've got several oil and gas investments, which in a way is tied into some of the geopolitical stuff. But as far as actually investments that are domiciled in those countries, no, we don't have any international assets that we cover or have access to.
Okay, question from Joy. Do you recommend crypto such as Monero or Ethereum?
So I'm going to answer that in two ways. I see Bitcoin as a reserve asset. To me, it's very similar to gold. They each have different strengths and weaknesses, but I treat Bitcoin the exact same as gold. I do like Ethereum from an investment standpoint, but I see it as a speculation. I'm not diehard. I own a small amount of Ethereum, very small relative to my other assets. And so I like it. I think I see the potential there. When it comes to Monero, I love Monero. I do not see it as an investment asset. I see Monero as money. Monero is what we thought we were buying. I got into Bitcoin in 2014. I thought I was buying Monero when I bought Bitcoin initially. It's digital cash, and if you think about, I know Glenn, you've written quite a bit about some of the risks, and especially when we talk about the risks of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, social credit scores, these things. Really what those are, they're elements of capital controls. Now, anytime we see capital controls implemented anywhere, inevitably it creates shortages and black markets pop up within which to people transact with each other. Now, we look down on black markets in the developed world, but in third world countries, they're a way of life. And so I see Monero as something that, and it's not exclusively black market, it's also peer-to-peer commerce. So I see Monero, I own a Monero and I want to, because I want to make sure I have something I can transact with if I need to. And when I say black market, I don't mean shady back alley stuff. For example, one thing we've really networked with the local agriculture community up here where I live. We buy all our meat and our eggs and from the local farmers. Well, what happens if the World Economic Forum says no, you can't buy meats anymore, and all of a sudden I can't buy meat with
Yep.
I suppose you could do it with dollars, but if they get rid of dollars, so yeah. Anyway, you see what I'm getting at here. Well, I could approach the farmers and say, hey, here's let's transact in Monero. So I don't see it as an investment asset, and I'm not advocating any illicit activity. That's not what I mean. So please don't get me wrong. But I see Monero as freedom money, and I want to make sure I have some freedom money in case it gets to that point, and I hope it never does.
Yeah. No, that's what I think too, and I think it's to keep it out of the. It's to keep liberty. I mean, that's what Monero is to me. Is it's private transactions as opposed to what is coming with central bank digital currencies, where everything will be monitored and tracked, and I mean, just down to the nth degree. It'll be totally tracked. So I think Monero is very important, and I think gold and silver is too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. So let's see here. Question from Kimberly: would you recommend Glint or UPMA for regular monthly spending? And I don't know if you know what Glint or UPMA do you?
I know. Yeah, actually, Eric put UPMA on my radar. Okay. I have not taken the time to do my due diligence on it, but I love the idea. I absolutely love the idea. I can't recommend or not recommend because I haven't used it myself, but I love that idea because it gets back to sound money. And we are not going to convince anybody in Washington, D.C. to restore sound money, but we can, if we're using it ourselves in our communities, I think there might be something to that. So I really like the idea.
Yeah, I don't think that it is, there's a saying in the money industry that bad money chases out good money. And what you want to do is you want to keep spending bad money, like fiat dollars and all of that stuff until it's like worthless. And then you want to dig into your, gold and Monero and stuff like that when you need to. But I don't see, UPMA, I've got some money in there, but I'm not going to spend that until I need to, because first of all, gold is going to go up. I think gold is going to go up, so I don't want to spend it.
It's going to skyrocket.
Yeah. So anyway,
one thing that might make sense though, and I'm not familiar exactly, but can you buy? So if you want to buy a gold coin right now, it's it costs you $2,500, something like that. Can you buy fractional amounts of gold through UPMA?
Yeah.
If so, that could be an avenue to where you can start building a gold position without having to save, the entire 1 ounce price to do so. So that might be useful in that sense.
The other advantage of UPMA is that when you buy it, so you buy it at the buy price, but then let's see, how does it work? So you buy it at the buy price, and then the sell price is the same as the buy price. So they're not making, like every other gold dealer is making money on the buy price and the sell
so
price.
There's no spread there, no premium.
No, they you can sell the gold that you have in UPMA at the same price as what the buy price is.
Yeah, that's very attractive.
That's
you're
cool.
not going to be able to sell an ounce of gold coin for less than $80 premium.
Yeah,
right now. So that's a very attractive aspect.
Hey, is that gold backs on the?
It is. Behind you there? Sharp eye. Yeah, I've got the gold backs. I tipped the lady who cuts my hair. I've tipped her with a couple gold backs, and I now tip her in Bitcoin too, because I'm trying to seed that idea that hey, we can. That's the same thing with the local farmers. I want to take. I'm not paying them the whole thing in Bitcoin yet, but I'm trying to get them comfortable with that idea that hey, we can transact with each other. We can have a local economy where we're not necessarily, dependent upon the system. We can do this ourselves. So I love it.
No, beautiful. Just so everyone knows what a gold back is. So can you get one of those and bring it up close?
Yeah, I got one right here.
Okay. So this is actual money This is printed by probably Alpine Gold, I think, right? So it's the company
so.
that is behind UPMA. And what it is it's a bill, but it's actually gold. It's actually printed gold. And so it's got a certain weight of gold in it. And then it's coated in plastic, and it's got a texture on it, so you can see the real thing. And it's actually better than what we used to have, because what we used to have is gold backed money, where we would deposit gold into a bank, and then they would give us a receipt, which was like $1 bill or a $20 bill or whatever. And then that was changeable. So we could convert that into gold by going into a bank and trading it back into gold. But these gold backs are actually gold. So it's kind of like crypto in a way, in that you're getting rid of those third-party intermediaries. Yeah. So I like that a lot, actually.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Alpine Gold, the company that produces these things. I think they guarantee to always buy them back.
Yeah.
At whatever the gold price is.
Yeah.
Relative to the content. So it creates, a fixed market. You could always sell it, even if somebody doesn't recognize what it is. You could always sell it back to the company who made them.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, if you want to, you can melt it down, and it's actual gold, and you have it that you can sell. So, yeah. Let's see. UPMA is United Precious Metals Association. Yeah. So a couple people had that question there. So Kimberly's got a question. Where do you recommend holding retirement accounts if you aren't using Charles Schwab or another self-managed account? I don't know if you're actually talking about retirement accounts in the traditional way, though, right?
I'm not. No, I personally don't use retirement accounts, and so I have no recommendation for where they should be.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. So please give examples of specific investments. You've done that through the class today. So this is from Keith. What would be the best first step to take in building assets? I think that's a great question.
That is a great question, and of course it depends on where you're coming from and where you're starting. But for me, it really, I think the key is consistency. I started with nothing, and then I started to gradually take a portion of the income that I was making every 2 weeks, no matter what, and buy assets with it. And so I personally today, I would start with gold and Bitcoin as reserve assets. That's just me personally. But I would, if you don't have any, I'd start there. And then you could also start building, if you were interested in the type of stock investments that we do, which leverage these kind of long-term trends, you can also start by building a portfolio gradually by investing a small amount into the stock investments as well. And so the key is and what we walk people through in the training is how to create an asset allocation model, where we lay out, here's all the different assets that are available to you. Here's what each do. Here's why they are important. And here's the strengths and the constraints with each. And so if you put together, we call it an asset allocation model, you figure out, okay, for me, how do these assets come together, and how much or what percentage do I want in each asset class? And so, if you want, say, 10% in gold, well, you start buying gold until you get up to that point. And if you want a certain percentage in Bitcoin, it's the same thing. And so we kind of walk people through how to create a custom tailored model, which is what directs where your investment dollars go. But I think the thing to do is just start with those investments and build up your foundation. And then once you get up to a certain point, that's when you can start looking at some of the passive income investments that we make, that we have available. And then once you're getting the extra monthly income coming in, well, all of a sudden now you've got more money to invest. And so it really starts to snowball over time. But the key thing is, I've shared this philosophy with quite a few folks over the last few years, and I do hear a lot from people. Oh, that sounds nice, Joe. That's great, but I don't have a whole lot to get started. And the idea I think people have is that we got to do it all at once, and you don't. Just go small steps. Just a little bit, whatever you have to invest. Just acquire these assets, a small amount, and that's where you begin.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to answer Keith's question too. So I think one of the first places to start is education. And I know that sounds like a pat answer. And it sounds like kind of a fluff answer, but I think it's really important to do that, to really start understanding different things. And this is what I was talking about with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Okay, I understand the theory of it, but I don't know how to put it into practical use. So that would be something that would be very interesting to me. Is I go in and I want to know exactly what is the formula, what am I looking for, what is the mathematical formula, what are the things to look out for, all of that stuff. I want to know exactly the practical. And I'll give you another example too. So one of the things that I used to do is, everyone says, okay, buy gold, right? Buy gold. What does that mean, buy gold? It took me a while to figure out that there's a big difference in investing in like gold bars, like the small gold bars, or even like an Australian gold dollar versus a Canadian gold dollar or a US gold dollar. A US gold dollar, if you're in the US, is legal currency. It is, I think, what they call specie or something like that. And that is legal currency, which makes it a different category than just buying gold, buying bars of gold, buying whatever. And so I think there's different tax things with that and all of that stuff. So education, I think, it just cannot be overemphasized. I think it's very important to do that.
Yeah, that's great. And we've got a great gold dealer that we can recommend people to. And this guy, anytime I want to buy gold, he tells me, okay, here's where the lowest premiums are. Here's what I'm seeing with supply and demand. Here's where you really should focus. And so that's another avenue, just having kind of boots on the ground professionals as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like, because I did some due diligence before I invited Joe on with us, because I want to be very careful with the people that I bring on. And so you told me that if you're going to bring an expert on, such as a gold dealer or something like that, you never take a cut of that. You never take a kickback or anything like that, right? You're just doing it for educational purposes for the members.
Exactly. Yeah. The revenue for the Phoenician League comes from membership subscriptions. And of course, for that business to be successful as a business and I hope, it's only going to fulfill its purpose if it is, it's got to provide useful service to people. It's got to do what we say it's going to do. And so, yeah, we do monthly calls every month. And a lot of times I'll invite somebody who's an expert on something that I'm not an expert on, and he'll share everything about it that he's got, and then he'll show us exactly how we could go about implementing it. And a lot of times that means working with this person directly. That's, people are free to do that. I don't have any financial incentive there. There's no kickback. Same thing with the gold dealer that we recommend, the tax advisor. We've got attorneys that we get people connected to. I have no business relationship with these folks. They're just folks that I rely on myself. And so all I'm doing is saying, hey, here, I've got a guy for that. I know exactly who can help you. And then it's up to the members and the professionals to work out whatever arrangement it is. But yeah, the only revenue we have is the membership subscriptions, and the revenue only comes in if people subscribe. So it's my incentive to make sure that this is the absolute best investment one-stop shop program out there. And it's got to do everything I say it's going to do, or else people are going to be won't stay on. So
yeah, so it's month to month, right? And they can cancel anytime.
It is. Yeah. We do have an annual option that is a discounted option. It's like a 22 or 23% discount if you do annual, and you can still cancel at any time. And of course, there's the 30-day money back guarantee, no matter what.
So what I like about what you're offering, and I want to be clear, you've given me access to it, but I haven't looked at all of the videos. I've looked at some of the videos. We've talked extensively. You and I have talked extensively about this stuff, but let me just kind of clarify what I like about what you offer. So what I like about what you offer is, first of all, education. Not just theoretical education, although you do that too, but you do the practical education. You give people tools to actually figure out the practical side of actually implementing it, which I think is really cool. And then you have these experts that you can put people in touch with, like tax advisors. I think tax advisors is super important. Those brokers that focus on residential or rental properties, those are kind of hard to find. I think that's a really good asset. That's a good thing that you offer there, is those connections to those people.
Yeah, and when members come in and we connect them, then they develop their own relationships with those people. And so, we're not the intermediary. We're just kind of the starting point and the introduction. And the great thing about, for example, the real estate brokers, well, their whole business is, they are bringing us investments that they've vetted through specific criteria as instruments for producing cash flow, and then they receive a commission whenever somebody buys that property from the seller of the property, not from us as an investor. And so I kind of chuckle because they provide an immense service, and these brokers also, they're the ones that you can get on the phone anytime if you have any questions with any part of the process. And in a sense, for us, they're almost working for free because we're not paying them directly, but they do make their money if investors buy the property. That's the business.
Yeah. I think that's very clear, and it's very upfront. So I think that's good. So let's see here if there's any other questions. I think we've answered a lot of these questions here. So this question from Margaret: do you recommend keeping one's gold yourself or putting it in an offsite depository?
Yeah, my preference, and this is just me, my preference, I want to have it up to a certain amount anyway. I want to have it myself in a safe that's hidden, that's secure, where I can access it at any time. So at least up into a certain amount, I prefer to have it where I know where it is and where my wife knows where it is. And, if there's an emergency, we've got it right there. I think if you're getting up to where you're talking, you're going to have really a lot of money in terms of dollars in gold. At some point, maybe it makes sense to do different kinds of storage. And we've got a guy in our network who knows about offshore storage options where you can store your gold in jurisdictions that are outside of, I guess, the U.S. scope or sphere of influence, just for some added protection if there are any type of crackdowns on owning gold again. I don't think there will be, but it's an extra element of protection. And then when you go to those, those offshore storage options, they've got insurance and they've got added security features that you probably can't have for gold at your house. But there is a trade-off, and that is, it costs you've got a certain expense there that you have to, that covers the security and the storage and all that. So I like it at home for up to a certain point. If you're going to have a ton, maybe you start thinking about the storage options.
Excuse me. My thoughts on that is that I like to diversify because you don't know what the situation is going to call for or what the situation you're going to find yourself in. So I do think it's important, at least for me, it's important. Yes, have some on you, but also store some overseas and just have options. Just kind of diversify where that stuff is. I definitely don't want to put it all in one place, but I do want to have it around because if you have to, let's say, leave the country or whatever, carrying gold is pretty heavy, and you don't want to do that with much gold, and certainly not silver, because silver will weigh you down big time. So yeah. So Joan has a very interesting question here. If you start monthly, can you switch to yearly if desired? I think
there's not an automated feature for doing that, but you just reach out to us, and you can switch to annual. We'll credit whatever amount you've already paid for the monthly. So within our system, it can't do it automatically, but we'll work with you. Just reach out to us, and we can absolutely make that happen.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've gone through most of the questions here. Yeah. So I think we've gone through most of the questions, and we're kind of coming up to the end here. So yeah. Anyway, I'm talking and I'm reading at the same time, and that I don't multitask well. So
I'm not a multitasker either. It's a challenge for me.
Yeah. So why don't you just give us some final words here, and we'll end with that.
Yeah, well, I'm just absolutely honored to have the chance to come up and Glenn, spend time with you and talk with everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm happy to talk about anything. If there's if anybody's watching the replay and has a question that we haven't covered, I'd be happy to answer it, Glenn, if you're up for it. And I certainly don't mind coming back and providing written answers or even recording or whatever. I'm just happy to answer anything. I love talking about this stuff. This is my passion, but it's I think I'll leave you with this thought. And it's a little, I don't know, in a sense ironic in that I'm immersed in money and finance and investing every day. I care absolutely nothing about money. I care nothing about money. I do not, it's not what I care about is liberty, is freedom. And as best I can tell, in the world that we're in, the better your financial situation is, the easier it is to kind of create, additional liberty. And then you get into the aspect where one thing we talk about in the membership is becoming a steward of civilization. And you look at all these trends. I'm a father of 2 children, and I am very concerned about the direction everything is heading, specifically for them. I don't want to leave them with a world where we can't figure out that who's a boy and who's a girl, and where we tell people men can have babies and all these other crazy things that are happening. A student, we talk about being a steward of civilization. I don't think that's going to happen top down. I don't think it's going to come from the political sphere. I think it's going to come if we get out in our communities and we become a person who is trustworthy, who looks out and connects with people, and figures out, well, what problems are out here that I could help solve, whether that's education or whether that's, just whatever. Everybody's got different talents and different interests. And I guess the more financial independence you have, I think the more you can redirect your time and your attention to those types of things. And so that's what I'm passionate about. And so I'm just very thankful to have the opportunity to talk with you. If I can be of any more assistance, please just let me know. But I'm doing this because this is my way of really hopefully providing immense value. And I hope that we can help people create true financial security. And then let's save this darn civilization, man, because I don't want to watch it go down the tubes.
Yep. Okay, so tell everyone what your email address is.
Yeah, so I am available at jwithrow, WITHROW, at PhoenicianLeague.com. And that's PhoenicianLeague.com.
Okay.
And let me type this in real quick.
Type that into the chat. That would be great. Because that's a lot of spelling there.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's easy. I think, make sure that jwithrow at PhoenicianLeague.com. I think that's in the Q&A tab there. So happy to answer any questions if we missed anything. And then I think, did we put out the link to where people can learn more about the Phoenician League?
Yeah, so there's the offer there. It says join now, it's green button, join the Phoenician League. And so let me just say a few things to end it up. So coming full circle, I brought Joe on today because he's been a member of the Privacy Academy. Actually, before the Privacy Academy, it was called the Privacy Action Plan, and he's been a member for a number of years, and we've been chatting for quite a while. He's written articles for the Liberty Zeppelin. I like what he says. I like his perspective on the world. I've watched some of his videos on what he says in the course. I cannot say that I have taken the course or really taken advantage of the things, but I will, because I want to learn about this stuff, and I really like the practical side of what Joe offers. And I think there's a lot of really good things to learn and some tools that he has. And so, I think it's a good opportunity to sign up for this. And I also want to say one final thing. We are getting a cut of this. And this is basically just because we're giving them access to our network, our audience here. And so we do get a percentage of these, of the purchases. I just want to be totally upfront with that. And I did that because I did a lot of due diligence. He's not doing financial advice or anything like that. He's giving you tools. He's giving you education, all of that stuff. So, and I like what he has to say. And so, anyway, with that, I appreciate you being on here, and thank you, Joe, for being here.
Yeah. Can I mention one thing to you, Glenn?
Sure.
It's kind of funny. I chuckle about it anyway. I was going back the other day, and I was trying to figure out, well, when did I join I think it was Privacy Action Plan when I joined.
Yep.
I was trying to figure it out, and I was searching through my old emails, and I'd totally forgotten about this, but I found an email. It was from 2021, I think it was. And I had reached out to your team. You remember back then you had it so the different lessons were locked. And I think they would unlock each week. So and the idea is like, you don't want anybody overwhelmed. Like, just do one thing this week. Well, I reached out to the team because I was such a madman about trying to learn this stuff. I was like, hey, is there any way you can unlock mine early for me? And I chuckled because I was so immersed in what you were providing. I think it's so important, and I'm so appreciative of the work that you guys are doing. I think it's critical that we implement these things for privacy and security. That's another element to civilization that I fear has gotten away from us. So thank you for helping people with that. And it gives me a lot of peace of mind having implemented, what you've taught me.
Yeah. And if you experienced the lockdown, you must have been one of the very first people that signed up. I mean, you've been with us for a long time then. So that's appreciated. So anyway, thank you everybody for being here. And Joy just shared a link here, but I would appreciate it if you follow the offer. If you click on the offer, that would be better, because that is the link that we get credit for. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it, and have a good day, a good rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all your time.